Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Today I have for you a layout process video featuring some homemade buttons, homemade tip out elements, and I'll talk a little bit about my design principles along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. I pulled out my story binder and I want to get last year's Christmas photos documented before it turns into Christmas again this year. And my counterfeit kit for November, while it's not holiday themed, it does have some bits and pieces in it that will work for this layout. Particularly, I'm doing this gingerbread baking day documented from 2021. And we have some kitchen themed elements. So I'm going to pull those out. And here are the tip out elements that I created in a previous video. I'll link you up to those in case you want to check that out. And I am going to take my photos and use these tip outs to create my layout today. I have three 3x4 photos, so I'm trying to decide which tip out I want to use. This one has a little banner on it that says noteworthy, and so I thought that one would work. Even though it's not Christmas themed, I'm okay with that. If you've been here for a while, you will know that I don't have to have themed products for my layouts. However, I will throw in a little bit of Christmas theme a little bit later in this video, so stay tuned for that. I do like to trim my 3x4 photos down just a little bit so I can give them a mat and still fit in the same 3x4 space. And as I'm playing with these photos here, I'm trying to decide which tip out I want. And like I said, I thought I had chosen, and then I was starting to change my mind, and then I realized, no, the photo's not quite going to fit. So that is my process of going back and forth until I just make a decision and move on. In the meantime, I've pulled out some pattern papers that from my counterfeit kit that I think I could work with. I've got 3 solid colors here that I could use for matting, for journaling, and for some embellishing. I have these 2 main focal papers here that could be backgrounds. And as I put that tip out on top of that Paige Evans kind of quilty pattern, I realized it's too busy, and even with a nice big dark blue mat, I think it would still be way too busy. Now this pattern itself is busy, it's just less busy. I do tend to have challenges using these bigger, busier patterns, but I have a few tips that I will share with you along the way. And one is to let your elements breathe, which I am very bad at. That is kind of the idea of using more white space on your layouts. And I tend to be a full-bodied scrapper, which means I try to fill up everything. But with these bolder papers, you really got to leave more room for the paper to shine. So these tip outs help contain more photos in less space. So that's one of the good things about the tip outs. Now you just saw me putting some embellishments down, and I'm starting to build my visual triangle with my embellishments that way. And I'm starting to think about where my title's going to go and what my title's going to be. And that there's a line across the pattern paper that makes a great break in the pattern, and I'm going to tuck my title down there. So now you can see there that there's that vertical line in that paper. So I'm going to create some banners with some fishtail ends to them, and I clip up through the center of the strip, and then I will clip from each corner into that center, and that gives me a nice fishtail. As I'm looking at this, I'm thinking I like the contrast that it's providing, but it's going to need a little bit more separation from that background. So I will grab another piece of paper and add that in. I am not doing it just yet because I'm going to go ahead and spell my title and build up my title before I get to that part. With my title built, I do add some extra glue to those letters because I know some of these stickers don't stick very well. So here is where you see me. I've decided to go ahead and grab that third pattern. I'm going to recreate the fishtail just by tracing the previous 2. And I will add that third pattern into this grouping to be my title banner grouping. Moving them around back and forth a little bit, I will come to a decision about which direction they should be. Okay, once I get to that, I can go ahead and get everything glued down. Now my little mixer embellishment is not glued down, but I am getting my title pieces glued down, including all of those letters. So I've got that going on. Sometimes after I add that extra glue, I will give them a little bit of a firmer press with a flat tool like a ruler to help them stick better. Okay, and now I am ready to move on to my journaling block. So I'm going to cut this dark paper down to 3x4 journaling block size, and I will round the corners. Now, most people don't journal on dark colors because most people will use black journaling pens. However, today I'm going to use white. So I'm going to give myself some white journaling lines with some pigment ink, and this is a white pad from Hero Arts. I have a couple of white pads that I like. This one tends to be on the top of my stash because I pull it out often, so I do like the white Hero Arts pigment pad. That does need a little bit of time to dry because it's pigment ink, and I am sure to clean my stamp before and after so that I don't contaminate any other ink pads with any leftover goo that's on those stamps. So while that is drying, I am going to come back to my embellishing bits. I know I want these little kitchen tools on the lift up tab for that flip out, tip out. You'll hear me calling it different things throughout this. So that interactive element. I decide which photo I want to go on the front of that, and I'm going to trim down all of my photos to be just slightly smaller than that 3x4 size. And then my mats I'm going to do with this green, and that will come back, bring the photos back to a total of a 3x4 size. As I'm placing that on there, I realize the little fishtail banner is a little bit long, and it will cover up the head of one of the gingerbread cookies. So I will trim that down. Oh, but first, before I do that, I am doing what is typical for me and outlining elements with a nice black journal pen, and that is a way to add pop to layering without adding actual layering. Okay, so that is my photo finished up. I'm going to get it attached down to that flip up, and this is where you'll see that banner is slightly covering up that gingerbread head, so I will trim it down. And then we're going to move on to the inside, and I did cut the photo mats on the inside as separate mats. I could have just made a single 4x6 to go across the inside of this flip up, but I did it ahead of time just so I would have flexibility, and so I can just piece it back together and put it in there to make it 4x6 again, and that will work for my photos. Now here's the part where I realized I did want a little bit of Christmas pizzazz here, so that's easy enough to add with a couple of stamps. So I'm going to stamp this on the same green paper, and then I will fussy cut it out and kind of play with it on my layout to see how many of these I want, if I want just the one or if I want several. Usually I will do more than one for that repetition design element, and so I decide if this is working on this green pattern paper, I think it's okay. And then I'm going to cut out just this one to see where I might want to add these little Christmas trees onto my layout. And here it is all fussy cut out. These tiny images don't take long to fussy cut. So if you hate fussy cutting, go ahead and give it a try if it's, a few small things. And like I said, here I am trying it out to see where I want it to go, how many of these I want. I know I want one on the inside. I do consider putting one on my title block, but we'll talk about why I don't do that a little bit later. Perhaps one in front of my title, but I changed that up again also. So I know one behind these houses works perfectly because that creates a little scene, a little Christmas scene up there at the top of my layout. So in order to contain that Christmas scene, I'm going to pull in some more pattern paper. And at first I thought I wanted this, these are tiny Page Evan prints, and the small scale is very nice for this kind of embellishment backing. And at first I thought I wanted that dark blue to kind of mimic a night sky kind of look. But then I realized because my other embellishments in my visual triangle have pop of red, pinky red, I wanted to add that up there to that cluster as well. And while I was looking through those, I found a few other little pieces from these little paper books that I wanted to add to the layout. Now that one had flowers on it and said home. I just like the home part, so I trimmed it out. This one had the word together, so I fussy cut that out. And I eliminated another one that I pulled because it wasn't quite right. And now I'm just adding touches here and there to embellishments to kind of pull everything together. So fussy cutting, fishtail banners. I did round the edges on that upper pink paper that's going to back my little scene. And then it's time to start with the final touches of embellishment. So I'm starting with these teeny tiny sequins because I knew I wanted to add them to the night sky of my house scene and the Christmas tree. And then because those are so small, I needed kind of that mid-range final embellishment touch. So I added the larger sequins, and then I'm going up even one more notch with the embellishment sizes to these wood buttons that I created. And I'll link you up to that video if you haven't seen the button creation. One of the buttons I did not create was punched out of this little word piece that says home, and that brings in the repetition from that little word piece that I put on my journaling block. So I'm going to change up one of these buttons to add that word in there. And I moved a button off of that word home because I don't want that word to become its own embellishment cluster, because then that's 4 and it ruins the visual triangle concept. So I keep the embellishments around that part of the journaling block really small, so it's decorative but not big enough to read as a total embellishment cluster. And that's the same reason why I didn't put one of those little Christmas trees there. Speaking of which, here is where I'm finishing off the inside of this tip out. I add one more Christmas tree, more sequins, and just one more little red element for more repetition. And then I've got to put this layout into a page protector. Now, I've covered this in a previous video in more detail. I'm just giving you the super quick peek at this. If you want more details, I will link you up to that. But basically, you prep the page protector and you slice it open, and then you can add adhesive to your tip out and slide it into that open area of your layout. Now, you don't have to do this to your page protector. You can glue these tip outs right on top of the page protector at some other point. And sometimes I will put temporary adhesive on my tip out to keep it on my layout until I'm ready to file it away, and then I can re-adhere it to the outside of the page protector. Now, notice I forgot to put my journaling on, so that was pretty easy to slide it back out and then to slide it back in again. As long as you only have tip outs going in the same direction. If you've got opposite directions, which I do sometimes, that won't work as well. So make sure you get your journaling on there. All right, that is it for this time around. I hope you enjoyed something about this process video and you got some tips out of here. If you did, I do appreciate a thumbs up. I will be back several days this week with lots of videos, and again next week as well. So if you're new here, I do hope you'll subscribe to catch all of the goodness that is coming up. Until then, have an artful day.